In a WCCO exclusive, Senator Al Franken is talking about the allegations against him.
I'm not going to make any excuses. I am embarrassed and ashamed of some of what has come out.
Today, in an interview at his daughter's home in Washington, D.C., Senator Franken told our Esme Murphy he has no intentions of stepping down. And as Esme shows us in this WCCO exclusive, he's committed to earning back the trust of Minnesotans.
In a 35-minute interview, Senator Al Franken walked a line between apologizing and insisting he doesn't recall specific groping allegations brought by 4 different women.
I understand that, and again, I am going to have to do everything I can going forward to be enormously sensitive. I apologize to these women.
And he just sort of came at me.
The first allegation that surfaced was from radio host Leanne Tweeden, who said that during a USO tour in 2006, shortly before he announced his run for the Senate, Franken forcibly kissed her against her will.
With Leanne Tweeden, I said with her that I had a different recollection of the kiss we had during the rehearsal for that. But
what is your recollection of that kiss?
My recollection of that kiss is different from hers. It is that we were rehearsing a sketch where I kiss her, and it's really to set up a soldier coming up to kiss her. And my recollection is different than hers, but as I said, in this moment, I think it's important to honor the experience of women. So I apologized to her, and I meant it, and she was gracious enough to accept my apology.
Franken did unequivocally apologize for the photograph from that same trip that shows him smiling with his hands over Tweeden's breasts.
The picture, that was inexcusable, and that's the thing I'm most, I think, ashamed for.
Then there are 3 other women, Lindsay Mens and 2 others who came forward anonymously in a Huffington Post article. All have similar stories claiming that Franken, while posing for pictures with them, grabbed their buttocks. They say the incidents happened between 2007 and 2010, when Franken was either running for office or was a United States Senator. Are they mistaken that their butt was grabbed? Is that what you're saying?
I am not saying that. I don't remember these. As I said, I take thousands of photos, so I don't remember these particular photos.
I think with all due respect, I think people are going to look at this and find it hard to believe that someone such as yourself wouldn't know that they were grabbing somebody's butt.
I can understand how people would feel that way.
But have you ever placed a hand on some woman's butt?
You know, I can't say that that hasn't happened. I take thousands and thousands of pictures. Sometimes in crowded and chaotic situations. I can't say I haven't done that. And I am very sorry if these women experience that.
Are other women going to come forward? Are you aware of any other allegations?
If you had told me 2 weeks ago that a woman was going to come forward and say I disrespected her, I would have said no.
Well, I don't think any of them are using that word. I think that's your word. I think
or done anything like this.
Leanne Tweeden said he forcibly
I understand what she said, and I think they're not using the word disrespect. I think some people are looking at that word and saying, no, Lindsay Mens said you molested her on Facebook right afterwards. I think these women feel this goes way beyond disrespect. I understand that. I have a different recollection.
Franken says he is going back to work tomorrow.
I can win back the respect of the people of Minnesota, and I understand I have a long way to go.
So I take it that means you have no intention to resign?
No, we have an ethics process
that I agreed to cooperate with completely.
Now you can't recall.
Franken, who was among the most aggressive of questioners during appointment hearings for President Trump's cabinet members, says he is not going to let up on his criticism of the Trump administration.
Can you really continue to claim kind of a moral high ground on some of these issues, including the Trump-Russia investigation, when a lot of people feel you've been less than transparent about these particular allegations?
Well, I think I'm a good questioner, and I think that the questions that I'm asking don't go to my credibility. They go to the credibility of the witness. They go to the credibility.
But hasn't your credibility been undermined?
I would say yes, and I have a long way back. I have a long way back to win back the trust of the people of Minnesota. I've let people down. I've let the people of Minnesota down. I've let my friends and staff and supporters down, my family down. I'm just very, very sorry.
Senator Franken declined to talk about other prominent politicians and other public figures accused of sexual harassment, including President Trump, Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore, and former CBS and PBS news anchor Charlie Rose. Esme Murphy, WCCO 4 News.
Esme says 65 prominent DFL women signed a statement in support of Senator Franken, saying in part, while we are discouraged by the allegations, we appreciate that he has apologized and is committed to regaining the trust of Minnesotans. You can see more of Esme's interview tomorrow morning on CBS This Morning. Esme will sit down with Gayle Keane, Nora O'Donnell, and Vladimir Duthier tomorrow morning starting at 7.